Hallo, herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von Gemischter H4ck, heute mit der Episode 102. Und um auch ein größeres Publikum mit diesen Videos zu erreichen, habe ich mich entschieden, das Ganze auf Englisch zu machen. Also, welcome to episode 102 from Gemischter H4ck, now in English. Today we are going to hack the machine Corrosion 2 from Vulnhub. This is a series. There's already Corrosion 1, which is also a nice machine, but there are several walkthroughs available on the internet. And because of that, I want to take the opportunity today and do the little walkthrough on the Corrosion 2 machine. So what we do first is we open up a terminal and determine the IP address of that machine that I started now. So I'm doing nmap, running nmap, scan with SP, scan my network range, and see on which IP address this is running, and I can see this is on 10.02.21. So we do another scan and check what's on that machine, which ports are open on that machine. So I use the -A, -T5 timing and that IP address. There will be some password cracking activities in that video. I've already resolved this machine, and so I won't crack it now again during that session. I will only show you how to do it. You need to do that on your own. So okay, we can see we have 3 ports open on that machine. We have port 22, port 80, and port 88. So there's an Apache Tomcat running, as we can see. My first idea was to check if there's any vulnerabilities on that Apache Tomcat with that version 9.0.53, but I couldn't find any. So let's call this in the browser. So it's 10.02.21.88. So yeah, this is the default Tomcat app, or the default page. It's obviously just installed, and now my first idea was that there could be default credentials in use, but it was not the case. So there's no access for us to that Tomcat Manager application. So I decided to go for nikto and check what's running on that machine, if there's anything useful we can find. And yeah, as you can see, and I will abort that here, as you can see, there's a file called backup.zip. You can download that file. I already did that, so it's Corrosion 2. So if you try to unzip that file, it will ask you for a password. So we don't have any password here. So what I did was I cracked that backup.zip. You can do this by first calling zip to John, which will give you a hash file of that, or a hash of that backup you can crack with John, and then it's simply you just give John, you use the wordless rocku, and you run it on the hash file. If you do that, you will get the password of that, and you can unzip that file. So as I said, I already unzipped it, so here's what's inside the file. You can see there is no, that's wrong. So that's what's inside the file, and we can see that there's something interesting, and this is the Tomcat users file. We kept that file, and as you can see here, we have the credentials for the manager role, and with that we can access the Tomcat manager. The next step, it's a good idea to use the metasploit, since metasploit has some let's say exploit for, or an exploit vulnerability exploit for Tomcat, for the Tomcat manager. So we simply call the MSF console, start up the metasploit here. Takes some time. So what we're going to do with that is we will leverage that credentials to create a reverse shell which reflects back to our machine, and hopefully will give us a local shell here. So we will call the exploit, or we'll use the exploits, exploit multi HTTP, and then Tomcat manager upload. Okay, so show options. Okay, for the password, I need to go up a little. Was probably not the best idea to do it that way. I will copy that password. Copy selection. And I'll say set HTTP password and set HTTP user, which was manager. And then we have to set the remote host, which is in my case 10.0.2.21. Then we have to set the remote port which the Tomcat is running on, which is in that case 8080, and I think we can leave the rest as it is. So show again options. So we should definitely be fine with that. So the target URI is manager, which is fine. So let's run this. And ta-da! We have a Metapredator session opened, and now we can go and access the shell. So since we have now access to the shell, we can enumerate which additional users are on that system. So let's first check the home directories. As you can see, I'm currently the user Tomcat. Let's see what's in the home directories. So okay, we have Jay and Randy. Let's try to go into J or Randy. No, did we use the J? Okay, we cannot open that, so we don't have any permissions. As you can see, no permissions on that home directory. Let's go to Randy, and we have at least read access to that folder. Let's check the files in there. There's a user txt, which is obviously the flag for the user, which we now have or don't have. I think we do have it. So user txt, which is simply a hash here. Then we have a file called random base, and we have a file called note. Okay, let's check permissions. As we can see, we can't do anything here. We could execute that random base 64 pi, which will become handy later on. But beside of that, we can't do anything else. So you see nothing we can do here. This belongs to root anyway. And yeah, what we can do, and what's always a good idea, is to try the passwords you have on different user accounts. So we have already found one password in that file, so let's try it with the user J and retry that password. So let me check where it was. It was here. Take it from here. I think it's still in the cache, but okay, let's give it that password. And yeah, that obviously worked. Now we have we can check the etc pass wd file, and we can see that we can log on with that user. So there's no need to use that that metasploit shell here. I could spawn a TDY shell, but let's try it that way. SSH J, and again give it the known password. Okay, didn't work. Try again. Okay. So what's the issue here? Probably copied something over, or probably not. Let's try it again that way. If it doesn't work, it's no issue at all. Yeah, okay, that worked. And now we are J. So let's see what J can do. So we didn't have the permission to check his home directory as the Tomcat user, and now we're J. So let's first see where we are. We are in his home directory, so let's check what's in there. Okay, so this seems to be pretty default, but there's one interesting thing. As we can see here, it's a directory called files, which is obviously owned by a root user. So let's check on that. And there's a file look in it. So let's see what kind of file this is. And oh yeah, it's obviously an executable file. which is probably a substitute or a copy of the look which is installed in the system. I don't even know what that does, but yeah, we have that look, and we have obviously a similar file here. Let's see the permissions, and this has pretty strange permissions here. So this is world executable. So let's see if there is any GTFO bin for look we can use here. So, and we are good to go. So what we can do here, we don't have sudo privileges, we don't have any privileges, but we know that this file is owned by root, so it will have root privileges, and so we can do privileged reads, and this is where we want to check here. So a good idea is probably to define the file we want to have a look at. In that case, the most interesting file for me at that point is definitely etc shadow. And now execute that command. As we see, that failed. Why did this fail? Because we didn't call the look within that folder. We called the look which is located in the user bin look, or in the user bin directory. So let's call it again with a local look file. So we use this look file here. This is kind of crazy shell here. So let's try it that way. We execute that look, and bingo. Now we have permissions to view, or we abuse the permissions to view the shadow file, so we can now start to crack password hashes. So what we do is we'll copy that file, or like copy the text over. I already did this. I copy the text over. Now let's have another terminal here. So split this vertically. So as I said, I already managed to hack that machine. So I have the file shadow right here, which is just the same. Copied it over to my Kali machine, and I also copied the file pos.wd. And if you want to crack a shadow file, you need to unshadow it. So you need to run the command unshadow. You need to supply the pos.wd file, the shadow file, and paste this into an unshadowed file. Having that unshadowed file, you are able to give it to like hashcat or something. You can also use John, and I can tell you that you can simply use the RockU word list, and you're pretty good to go. This is what you do here. It will start cracking I don't know, I have a slow machine here, it's a virtual machine, so I will skip that since I know what will happen. In the end, you will end up with a password of our J, which we already know, and you will end up with a password of the user Randy, which we didn't know yet. You won't be able to crack the root password, so yeah, you need to go further with that. So once you've finished your password cracking, you can use that password, and I already know that, so I go back to my machine here, go back to the server and change the user to the user Randy. And I know the password, I'm entering it right now. And now we are Randy. As you can see, there's a better shell here. And now we can go to Randy's home directory. And now we can see that note. So this is, we can read that file, but we can't write that file here. Obviously, we cannot write anything. So if you have a look at that note, it will tell you, hey Randy, this is your administrator, and we cannot change any permissions, we cannot change any files, we cannot add or delete them, so we are not able to do anything here. Let's check what sudo l will tell us, so we can check what we can do, or if we are allowed to use sudo at all, because I can tell you that J is not allowed to use any sudo command on that machine, so probably Randy is allowed. So entering the password again, so that's just pretty long. And yeah, we see that we can execute that command. So you see that we are allowed to run that random base 64 Python with elevated writes, but let's have a look at the file. We are not allowed to change the file. So what can we do here? Let's have a look at the file, what it does. So as we can see, it's importing base 64 library, and as far as I understand, it's simply encoding a message you enter into base 64. Okay, so as I said, we cannot change that file, so it's unwritable. So we cannot inject any code in here which will help us to move on. But there's a nice little thing that might help us here. So if we have a look at that base 64 library, which is imported here, this may help us. So let's have a look at the library directory, which is located in userlib, and we can see that we're using Python 3.8 here. So we have a look at that, 3.8. And now let's see, base. All right. There's the base64 Python, which is the library which is called in here and which is imported. And then from this base64 we are calling the procedure called b64 encode. So we can see that anybody can write this file, and now we can simply go and edit this file and inject our own code. So coming back to the GTFObins for Python, we want to have a shell. We want to spawn a shell, and since this Python is executed with root, we will have a root shell here if we run that command. So at first we need to add that import for OS so that we can execute system commands. So I will additionally import that here. Import OS, and then let's check if we can find, let me collapse that here since I think we won't need that. Since we can find the encoding function, which is right here. This is b64 encode. Let's add our injection here. Take this. I really don't like the sh, so I will probably use bash here. Let's try it that way. Okay, so if we now call the b64 encode with our message from the script, we will automatically spawn a bash with root privileges. So I saved that. That obviously worked. And if we go back now to the home directory, or maybe we can call it right from here, I'll copy that. So I do sudo, I paste that. I'm asked to enter my string I want to encode. So I simply add enter here. The program terminates and we are now in the root shell. So if I go ID, you can see I'm root, and we can now check for the root directory, and we can see there is a root txt, and we are done. I hope you enjoyed that little process running through that machine. It took me some time, and it's not always that easy as it seemed here. There was a little trial and error on that machine for me. I had some issues decrypting or cracking the password from that zip file due to some strange parameters I used. Somehow it didn't work, and in the end it worked out pretty well. And yeah, I found it very interesting to see how that injection through that Python library worked. And it's not always the case that you can write these files here, but this was definitely a nice one. And I think this was a pretty good machine. It had a lot of fun, and probably I will also provide you a small walkthrough to the first machine of that series. So yeah, enjoy, and looking forward to another machine. So if you like that video, please subscribe to the channel and leave me a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. And yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.